I'm going to die. She is going to die. We are all going to die. These are the words that I groaned in agony moments before delivering my second child. My two midwives and my doula replied in hushed but firm words of encouragement. "Mama," one said to me, "that just means she's almost here." And she was. Within minutes, I was holding my newborn on my chest, my face flushed, my blood thrumming with oxytocin, the love hormone. You'd never know it now if you've met her, but Piper McKenna Jane Foxall came into the world quietly. Almost midnight in our ensuite, lights dimmed in the deep bathtub. Laying on my chest, taking her first gulps of air. She didn't even cry, actually, she just sort of took it all in. While I floated in a lake of release and joy that overrode the pain which had seconds before been off the charts. It was perfect. She was perfect. We did it. But I can still hear those words. I'm going to die. She's going to die. We're all going to die. Mama, that just means she's almost here. The disciples have just heard Jesus say some pretty jarring things, scary things. The falling of the temple, wars, rumors of war, earthquakes, and famine. The disciples are terrified. They want to know when. When will it all take place? How long do we have? Give us a date, Lord. But Jesus answers cryptically, saying to them in verse 8, "This is but the beginning of the birth pangs." Now I know about birth pangs. With Acadia, they went on for hours, 18 to be exact. They came on so quickly and so intensely that we were certain this was it. After a trip to the hospital in the middle of the night, we were sent home to try and get some rest. The signs suggested we were barely past the starting block. Conversely, with Piper, I spent the first few hours of labor in denial. But then, when I was assessed and convinced that baby was on her way, I got my game face on. I was ready. Let's do this. I felt strong and brave, confident and courageous. But this was just the beginning of the birth pangs. At the beginning, you see, you can still sort of walk around through the contractions, talk a bit. Your breath might hitch, but you've got your visualization techniques ready at hand. Ride the contractions, they say, like waves. Stay on top of them. Don't panic. Don't tense up. Just focus. I labored with my eyes closed. The disciples would have had an idea of what early birth pangs look like. As children, they would have seen their mothers laboring. Perhaps they'd have witnessed other women in their life too, sisters or aunts, pacing the tents, breathing hard, pausing and wincing, groaning and crying. It's part of the process of giving birth, and it hurts like hell. And it gets worse before it gets better. The image of birth pangs is actually quite common in apocalyptic literature, as a metaphor for speaking of the suffering that will be experienced before the end. And here's what we need to understand about apocalyptic literature. The etymology of the Greek word for apocalypse is to uncover, to remove the lid, to reveal, to make known. We've made some collective errors in our definition of the term apocalypse over the centuries, often boiling it down to meaning some kind of cataclysmic disaster. The apocalypse, we'll say, whether we're talking about the Bible or sci-fi, is about the destruction and it's about the end of the world. It's a bad thing, a scary thing, something to be feared. Apocalypse has inherited a bad rap. Although in fairness, passages like this one, often called Mark's Little Apocalypse, don't help the case. What with the famines and wars and darkness and such. So go back to the etymology. The breakdown of the Greek word, apokalypsis. It means unveiling, revealing, something that couldn't be seen or understood before is now coming to light, coming, one might say, to birth. "Look," said one of the disciples to Jesus as they came out of the temple, "look at the big shiny stones. Look at all these grand symbols of power and prestige and steadfastness. Wowee!" Jesus, who I already mentioned was rather on edge these days, replied sharply, "They're coming down, all of them. Not one of those big fancy stones will be left on the other. It's all going to be gone, obliterated, dust, ash." Jinkies, Jesus. Nobody wanted to talk much after that outburst. It was later, Scripture says, later in private, that a few of Jesus' closest friends sort of broached the topic with him. "Hey, buddy, what did you mean by all that? I mean, the temple is the house of God, the pillar of Jewish strength. We can't even fathom its demise, so if that's the case, at least give us a timeline here." Jesus answers them with even more fervor than before, this time adding in images of war and violence, natural disaster and famines. And, he adds, this is just the beginning. This is just the start of labor. And there's the key. Pay attention to that reference, because that's actually what makes this apocalyptic literature, and not just some horror story. Because labor implies delivery, which points to new life. Labor is not pain for the sake of pain, it's pain for the sake of life. It's productive. It's doing something new, creating something new. I'm gonna die, she's gonna die, we're all gonna die. Mama, that just means she's almost here. We need to be reminded of this feature of apocalyptic literature again. And there's no better time for this reminder than right now. In the throes of a global health crisis, a pandemic that's grounding planes, shutting borders, closing stores and businesses, and physically isolating us from one another in our homes. In a time that feels like a calamity, a catastrophe, a cataclysmic disaster, we become like the disciples asking, is this it? Is this the moment? Could this be the end? What's the timeline? How much toilet paper should I buy? We've asked these questions before, hundreds of times, during the plagues and various wars, when the clock struck midnight on Y2K, or after 9/11, or when auspicious dates appeared in Mayan calendars. But all of that is a misunderstanding of apocalypse. Apocalypse is not about something ending, it's about something new being born, being revealed. At the heart of true apocalyptic literature is encouragement and hope. I actually think that this is Jesus at his pastoral best. That which looks like devastation and defeat will be God's victory. It's going to hurt, but wait till you see what's born out of it. If we step back into Mark's gospel and if we look at the big picture, Jesus and his friends are on a one-way ticket to the events of Holy Week. The Last Supper, the arrest in the garden, the trial, the crucifixion, and Jesus' death. At that moment, the sky goes black and the curtain inside the temple, the thing separating the presence of God from the world, it tears from top to bottom. The day we call Good Friday is a day of anguish and blood, sweat and tears, pain, tearing, and wailing. And you know what else has each of those features? Childbirth. I'm gonna die, she's gonna die, we're all gonna die. Did you know that the moments before a baby is born is called transition? The process of changing from one state or condition to another. It's the height, the pinnacle of pain, of fear, of resiliency and courage. transition. Midwives know it. When they hear a laboring mother use language of death, of giving up, of being done, they know that the new is on the cusp of delivery. Revealed, uncovered. Mama, it just means she's almost here. Transition, apocalypse, new life. Death and birth are inextricable. The pain and horror of the cross, the transition within the tomb, and the new life of resurrection. Apocalypse is not something to be feared, but celebrated and embraced. Not because it feels good, though, because it so often hurts like hell, but because the pain is productive. It's worth it for the new thing that's being born. And so perhaps instead of asking when, like the disciples, it's more appropriate to ask what. What is being born out of these contractions, this early labor, the pain and transition? On a societal level, we know that our current situation has the potential to get worse before it gets better. And we know that the measures being put in place to save lives and manage the pressure on our healthcare system will trigger ripples that will have an impact on us for years. Over 1 million claims to EI were made in just 8 days. Businesses are struggling to stay afloat. Many have already had to close. Banks and other institutions are being asked to defer payments or lower them, at least for now. Schools are closed, libraries are closed, our parks are wrapped in caution tape. We can't even gather at church to find peace and comfort in each other's presence. The world is not as it should be, and it is scary. But what if it's not a catastrophe? What if it's an apocalypse? That is, what if it's an unveiling, a revealing, a birthing, a new way of being? A chance to reimagine the world when bans and closures and isolation just start relaxing. We have an opportunity as a society, as a country, as a world, to put things back together in a new way, a different way. This could be the start, the birth of something new. New ways of doing business, of viewing and valuing time, valuing humanity over the bottom line. New ways of caring for each other and protecting the most vulnerable. New ways of leading and nurturing. New ways of understanding productivity and the stewardship of creation. What if we're living in a transition right now? And we're on the cusp of an apocalypse, an uncovering, a revealing. What is about to be born? I'm gonna die, she's gonna die, we're all gonna die. Mama, it just means she's almost here. The old is passing away. Behold, I make all things new. Also, what if instead of asking when or how long, we ask who? Who is being born? It's natural for any of us to feel scared or nervous or angry or sad. But perhaps this is a chance for us too to experience an apocalypse on a personal level. Perhaps in the midst of our pain and confusion and fear and anguish and loneliness, maybe we are in transition, changing from one state to another state. Can you feel it in your blood and in your bones? Are your priorities shifting? Your values? Are you discovering perhaps that the things you craved, the things you wanted, weren't actually the things that you needed? And now that you're finding your needs and finding ways to meet them, those other things no longer have a pull on you. I can tell you, for as much as I enjoyed going to the malls, for example, what I actually crave, what I miss the most, isn't buying new things. It's meeting new people and having coffee with friends. What are you discovering about yourself in this time of transition? This isolation is painful, but man, is it ever revelatory. These days of the coronavirus pandemic are scary and frustrating and sad for so many of us, but Mama, Papa, it's because she's almost here. the new thing that God is doing. God did not cause this pandemic. God doesn't want this pandemic. But you can bet your life that God will use it and bring something to birth through it, in your life and in my life and in the world around us. Jesus said to his disciples, when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is still to come. For nation will rise against nation and kingdoms against kingdoms. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. This is but the beginning of the birth pangs. What if this wasn't a calamity, but a word of hope? Birth pangs are not things to be feared. They hurt, but they're the gateway to new life. Resistance only makes them hurt more. Riding them, breathing through them, staying present, grounding, focusing, even to the point of death. Death to an old way of being and transitioning to the new. We're living in an apocalypse moment. Things are being uncovered, revealed. And on the other side of this, there will be something new. Resurrection has never been so poignant in our lifetime. Do not despair. Do not be afraid. Hang in there, because she's almost here. Behold, saith the Lord, I make all things new. To God be all the glory. Amen.